back to Great Day. If you're struggling to make a change in your life, there are two roads you can take. You can take a turn for the worse or use your hardships to push you forward. Here to explain, please welcome psychiatrist Dr. Denise McDermott. Hello there.
Hi.
All right, so what we're going to hear from a few of the women later today is kind of how family patterns kept going from generation to generation, or that negative self-talk dictated what they thought they could and could not do and broke through. What's the difference between the person who, several people who experience the same thing, but one goes this way, the other goes that way?
Well, I think we all go through times in our life where we have crisis. And I think one of the biggest core things that I see with the ladies in the book and also with the patients that I see is when you can turn a crisis and a struggle and kind of say, nuh-uh, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And you can really shift fear into a vibration of love.
Yeah, because I think at times when we feel like we are the most powerless, what we don't realize is that we're still the most powerful person in our lives, right? And I remember talking to a group of kids in an elementary school in a very economically depressed area. There were drugs everywhere. In fact, some of the kids were actually, elementary school, were actually the ones who were delivering drugs for the drug dealers, because when they got arrested, they got returned right back to their parents, right? But I asked these kids, who is the most powerful person in your life? And this kid goes, it's our parents. I'm like, well, not in this case, right? He goes, oh, okay. And then another little boy says, it's Jesus. I go, not even Jesus. And he goes, really? I said, because Jesus wants you to choose him. And that means you have the power, you have all of it, to choose him and choose the course for your life. And their eyes just got wide and went, because they're kids. They're thinking, I don't have any power. You have all the power as a human being, right?
And I am so glad you said that, because I work with children, and I think if we can teach our children at a very young age that self-love is one of the most important things, accepting ourselves for exactly where we're at.
Yeah, and despite the bad things your parents might do, or those people who are supposed to love you might do, they have their own demons. You don't have to hate them for that, because all of us get there, honestly, I think. It's like what impact or what trauma you had as a child will impact you. You're not a bad person, just things happen to you, right? You had a moment that brought you to your knees.
Yes. In 2006, I was trying to get pregnant, and when you get your lab results back and you meet with the doctor and you find out that you have infertility, and oh my gosh, I'm working with children all the time, families, and so I was just determined I'm going to have a family. So I was so determined, and I took that kind of, oh no, what happened?
Yeah, but let me touch on that, because we know a lot of people deal with infertility. And the hard part is that any insecurity you had as a child comes rushing in. You know, and you have to first fight those battles. I have a friend who was saying, maybe I don't deserve to be a mother. And I said, no, you are already a mother. You just have to figure out where that baby's coming from.
You know, I have to tell you, this is where I really do think I had such a strong faith in God, because I did love my life so much. And I thought, am I supposed to go on a different path? Am I supposed to work with kids in the orphanage? Am I supposed to make a bigger impact on the world? And so I did go through the stages of anger. I was kind of angry. I was like, why do I have this house? Why did I work this hard? I had the perfect neighborhood to raise a child. So I did go through that normal feeling.
Right.
And then I sort of took a deep breath and just let myself grieve. And then I had faith, and instead of getting the two-seater car, I got the family mobile.
Yeah, you were preparing.
I was ready to go. I was going to make that happen.
Yeah.
And now I have it all filled up.
Yes, yes you do, because what did you do?
Well, I adopted my son at birth, and that actually... And even that, I knew probably my first marriage was going to end, because my first husband was really afraid. And so I knew...
fertility issues can break a relationship.
And so I knew when I was meeting with the attorneys that I would possibly be a single mom for a while. And I was, but I did it. I was a single mom with my practice, and I got right back out there and started dating. So I had... I had diapers being delivered and lingerie all at the same time.
You said, you know what, I'm going to find my sexy.
Oh, yeah.
And you did.
And when you don't give birth, you're not dealing with some of that after. I was like, yay, I don't have the pregnancy look.
I have a 2-week-old. Look at me.
Yeah.
Now, I was adopted, and that lingerie got her a husband, people. You're married now.
Yes. And A husband, and I call myself a bonus mom. And I have bonus children because the word stepmom kind of sounds like the Cinderella story.
Right.
And so now we have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an almost 8-year-old.
And your SUV is full.
Yeah, my SUV is full.
And let's talk about that, too. I think I get this a lot from people, too. Please fix me up with somebody. Please fix me up with somebody. I think it's so important to do a little bit of work on yourself first because people say, I always seem to get the guy who. And you got to ask yourself, why are you getting the guy who? What role do you play, right? Or with the guy who says, I always get the woman who. What role are you playing? It's almost like a magnet. Like people will find each other, right? And that would be bad for each other or people good for each other. I remember a friend of mine saying to me once, when you change your light, you change your moth. So in relationships, speak to those people who feel like they just can't find that person.
I actually think it's really important that you're in a place where you really love yourself at the time you're going to meet someone. And then I'm big on really setting visions. And so I kind of had an idea. I envisioned the man I wanted to fall in love with.
See, this is what we all do, right? Like, how many of you admit it? Okay, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. When you had your first date, or even a couple of dates after, did you put... On the very first date, you put your name with his last name. How many of you did that? Raise your hand. Yeah, raise your hand. And how many of you started naming the kids? Okay, you envisioned your man, yes.
So, and then I have to admit, this is kind of embarrassing. My sister was a professional dater at the time.
Oh.
Meaning she knew all the online sites. And so we grabbed a glass of wine as I was dealing with that feeling. There was also infidelity going on. And so I just said, and I just really felt like there wasn't enough love. He didn't have enough self-love. So we wrote a list, and I wrote one of those, if anyone's done online dating here, you have to write a profile.
Yeah.
So I wrote a profile, and you're not going to believe this. The first man I went on a date with, actually I had my ex-husband babysit, by the way. That's a whole other fun story. Oh, yeah. I walked out of the house looking good. And so I met my now husband.
On the very
first date.
Well, there you go. Okay. Coming up, some of the women that are in this book. If you're in a family where there's a history of abuse, how do you stop the cycle? Our next guest shares her story when we come back.